So the next step is to add some event handlers for the buttons on the form. So at the moment, we'll just start off with the first button. So I'll select the button, and over here in the properties window, we'll have a look at the events on that control. So clearly it's the click event that we're interested in. Now, don't do this, but if you did double click on this event, it would add a method to the code behind class, and the name of the method would be generated by Visual Studio. So for example, if our control is called this year button, then the event method would be called this year button underscore click. And that's fine in most situations, but bearing in mind that the event handler code for this button and this button is going to be fairly similar, so I'm actually going to use the same handler method for both buttons. So I don't really want to choose a name that's based on one button or the other. I want to choose a more generic name. So I'm going to type in a name for the event method in here. I'm going to call the method the button underscore click. Okay, and I'll press enter. And Visual Studio has added that method, the event handler, to our class. So what I want to do in here is I want to get the user's name, and I want to display a list of all the countries the user has visited this year or last year. So let's start doing that. So I'm going to append to the result label a string, and the string is going to be formatted like this. Countries visited by, and then we'll have a placeholder for the person's name, and then we'll have a line break, and let's put in the name text box value. Okay, just make sure there that you do have plus equals. I really do want this to be a cumulative addition to the result label. I want to explain exactly how the label remembers its previous value and adds to it each time you do a round trip to the server. So make sure you do have a plus equals there, not just an equals. Okay, so that's added the name of the person, and now we're going to add the list of all the countries that the user has added. Now then, if you have a multiple selection list box and you want to figure out which items have been selected, you have to, unfortunately, loop through each item and check each item in turn to see if it's been selected. There isn't any easy way to say to the list box, please give me back all your selected items. You have to manually iterate through each item yourself. So we're going to write a loop, which is going to iterate through each list item in the country list. And then for each of those items, we're going to check if that item was selected by the user. Okay, so you might remember there's a selected property which tells us whether or not that item was selected. And if it was selected, in other words, this is a country that the user has visited, then we want to add that to our label. So result label.text, and we're going to add to that label. Let's just put a star in there, just for aesthetic purposes, and we'll close it, and then we'll have the actual value of this item. So that would be the name of the country. And we'll also put, in quotes, a line break after each item, so they get displayed nicely on the screen. Okay, so that's the end of the if statement, and that's the end of our loop. And then finally, we'll just add another line break at the end of our result label. Like so. So let me just summarize briefly what we've done. The button click handler will append to the label the name of the user and a list of all the countries that the user has selected in the list box. Let's run it and see what happens. Control F5. So let's enter a name. So we'll go for Joe. And let's say Joe has visited Australia and Germany. And we'll click visited this year. And there it says countries visited by Joe, Australia and Germany. And now let's enter somebody else's name. So we'll go for Bernie. And Bernie has visited Canada and France. And click the button. Okay, that's great.